Hello, what's up YouTube? Ronnix with another video, and in this video I want to show you guys the mistakes retouchers do, or the commonest retouching mistakes retouchers do or photographers do in Photoshop during the skin retouching process. So this is not like the usual tutorials, but this is just to point out those major and big mistakes that people do and never notice at all. So the very first mistake most retouchers do, and before I can go ahead with this tutorial, this image was taken by Suter Photography, and the link is going to be in the description of this very video. So the very first mistake most retouchers do is not being able to remove blemishes out of their images. So for this case, if at all I zoom in this image, you can see that there are some skin imperfections in this very image. So those imperfections can include blemishes. So before doing any skin retouching, always make sure that you remove these blemishes, because most people are going to take you off a serious retoucher depending on the amount of blemishes that you left. So the lesser, or if at all you leave no blemishes in your images, you're going to be regarded to as a serious and a careful retoucher, and if you do otherwise, you're going to be a careless retoucher. So just get these tools. So whichever tool you're comfortable with, you can use the spot healing brush tool and just click over those blemishes to get rid of them. So I'm just going to show you just a little bit. So always make sure that you have a backup. So I forgot to show you that. So after that, make sure you remove the blemishes. That should be the number one point, because you're going to be really fresh, and your eyes are going to be really fresh and they won't look tired. So if at all you remove blemishes at the very start, you're going to be able to identify every single blemish in all your images. So the very second mistake most retouchers do, or people that use frequency separation for skin retouching in Photoshop, they tend to use the wrong frequency separation for the wrong images. So by using wrong frequency separation, I mean they tend to use the wrong bit ratio for images when they are trying to play maybe the actions or are doing the retouching onto their images. Remember, we have different bit sizes or bit ratios for images. We have 8-bit images, 16-bit images, and maybe 32-bit images. So the difference is going to be, or the frequency separation you're going to be applying onto these images is going to entirely depend on the size or the bit size of your image. So in order to know the bit size of the image, you can simply come right here and you can see we have, this is a 16-bit image. So you can simply come to image and come to mode, and you can see the checked format is the bit channel of your image. So in order to have the best results from your skin retouching, always make sure that you apply the best bit action for your skin retouching in Photoshop. So for this case, let me show you guys this. So for example, I'm going to come under my actions, and I have 8-bit frequency separation actions and 16-bit frequency separation actions. So it is not going to give me the best results if at all I look at this image and it is a 16-bit image, meaning this image is going to be containing various details that are going to impact on the amount of details or the level of skin retouching that I'm going to be attaining at the end of the retouching process using frequency separation. So if at all I use an 8-bit image, it means that it is not going to be, rather if at all I played my 8-bit frequency separation action like this, it is not going to be compatible with the details embedded in this image, meaning that incompatibility within the action played for frequency separation skin retouching and the image is going to determine or depend on the results that I'm going to be able to achieve in this particular image. So make sure that you play the right frequency separation action, or use the right frequency separation technique for the bit channel of your images. So that is the second mistake most retouchers do. Then now the third mistake people that use frequency separation do is using the wrong Gaussian blur radius. So by wrong Gaussian blur radius, I mean most of the times when we come and maybe I'm going to come and I play my 16-bit action. Since this is a 16-bit image or 16-bit channel image, I'm going to come and play my 16-bit frequency separation action. So by choosing the wrong Gaussian blur radius, I mean when it reaches this point whereby you have to blur out the textures or eliminate the textures from the images, most people that use frequency separation tend to ignore this very important step, because when you use this or when you skip this very important step, it means your details at the end of your skin retouching are going to entirely depend on this very step. So for example, if at all I move this radius slightly to this point, it means I'm not going to be able to blend or even out the skin tones in the image quite well, because you can see I can still see the details. So for frequency separation, when you're doing it, you always have to make sure that you move this radius. So most of the times I've seen most of the images you guys send in my DM on Instagram, most of you, I think you tend to cram this radius. So remember, different cameras are going to be having different megapixels, and different people have different skin textures or complexions. So if at all, like for example, this model has a kind of smooth skin, if at all she has a smooth skin, it means I'm going to be using a lower radius on her type of skin than a model who has defined textures on her skin. So always make sure that you move this radius up to a point when you're starting, you click on it and move it up to that point when you're starting to lose out on these details. You don't have to cram this radius, just move it depending on the image you're going to be retouching. So for this case, I'm going to move this radius up to a point when I'm losing out on the skin details of this particular model. So I'm just going to move it up to around, I think at around 8, I've lost out on the skin details. So by this, it means that on my low frequency layer, I'll be able to even out the tones really well, but while regaining back these textures that I have lost out on this step. So I'm just going to hit OK, and the action is going to continue playing, and that is going to take us to our fourth mistake most people that use frequency separation do. So the fourth mistake is using the mixer brush tool, or applying the mixer brush tool in order to define the skin details or to even out the skin tones in our images. So the very first mistake people do when they're using the mixer brush tool is applying or using the mixer brush tool to achieve results while they are doing it on wrong layers. I've been getting that so many times, and most people really don't know which layer to use or to blend the skin tones on. So for example, if at all I come to my mixer brush tool, so the very first mistake people do is, first of all, the settings, before you can even go towards the layer side. So when you come under the brushes and right click and get your mixer brush tool, so the very first mistake people do is having this wrong setup of their mixer brush tool settings. So always make sure that your brush is a clean one. And right now we have two options right here. So when you make or select these wrongly, it means that you're not going to be able to get the best results from your retouching. So for example, the very first option right here says load the brush after each and every stroke, and the very second one is the opposite of the first one, which is cleaning the brush after each and every stroke. Remember, when we are doing skin retouching, we really want the brush to be as clean as possible, meaning we can't opt for the very first option, which is loading the brush after each and every stroke. It means we want the brush to be clean after each and every stroke. So don't check or don't highlight or select this first option, just select this second option, and make sure you use a low wetness when you're going to start blending. Make sure you really, if at all you're going to leave these at their defaults, like load 75, mix 90, and flow 100, make sure your wetness is as low as possible, because most of the times when your wetness is high, it means you're going to be having a color spill in the skin tones of the model. For example, if at all I had a high wetness, so let me just turn this back on. If at all I had maybe a high wetness like at around 34, and I tried to even out the tones right here, you can see how this is peeling color. Let me just show you guys. You can see how it has peeled color towards these ends, and it is really making the image look really plastic and unnatural, and you're distorting the model's face in that process. So make sure that you set that really well. Just going to undo that. So make sure that your wetness is always below 10%, and I prefer to use a wetness of 9%, load 75, mix 90, and the flow 100. So this takes us to the very second mistake under the wrong application of the mixer brush tool, which is applying the mixer brush tool process on a very wrong layer. So most of us tend to apply the mixer brush tool on a wrong layer. Remember, when we are dealing with evening out the skin tones in a particular image, we want to even out only skin tones, and we don't want to involve textures in our images. So for example, this is our low frequency layer right here. So if at all I want only deal with this layer, you can see right above here on the settings, we have the option that says sample all layers. So when you sample all layers, it means that you're going to be using the information in all of these layers, and it is going to be embedded in our mixer brush tool. So for example, if at all I come and I check this layer, it means I'm going to be sampling information from the high frequency layer, and this layer too, if at all it has any information. So let me show you guys what I'm trying to mean by this. So if at all I come and I start blending, you can see I'm trying to blend on the forehead, and you can see that it is copying textures. If at all I turn off the texture layer, it has copied the textures and it has started painting them, because I've sampled from all layers in the frequency separation group. So always make sure that you don't do that when you're going to even out the skin tones. Always make sure that you turn off sample all layers, because we only want to blend or even out the skin tones that are embedded in the low frequency layer. So that is what you always have to do. And now this takes me to the third mistake most people do when it comes to using the mixer brush tool, and that is the direction of the movement for your mixer brush tool. So let me try to zoom out. So for example, you can see the way our face is really formed, or the way it is shaped, it has different dimensions, or different parts of our faces move into different directions. So for example, if at all I wanted to even out the tones on the nose area, I can't move my mixer brush tool from left to the right, because it is going to be changing the colors. You can see how it is distorting the beautiful shadows that we had on the nose area. So for that case, I'm just going to undo that. Let me hope I've undone everything. So for that case, if at all it comes to blending or evening out the nose area, it means since the nose is an up to down kind of movement or shape, I'm just going to make sure I move the mixer brush tool in that format. You can see how I'm moving it from up to down, just like that. And when it comes to also the forehead area, you can see how this light is falling right here. It means I have to move it in an up to down kind of format, so that I can retain the original shape of the model's face. You can see even on this beautiful light right there. And when it comes to the cheek area, you can see how this is shaped. So I have to move it in this direction and follow like that direction of the model's cheek, just like that. So in this one, I turn this on and off. You can see that the original shape that is intended to be in the model's face has been naturally retained, and we have not distorted any facial structures of the model. And now this takes us to the other mistake, that is mistake number 5, retouchers do when they are doing skin retouching using frequency separation, and that is the lasso tool errors or lasso tool mistakes. So the very first mistake I see most of you do is the feathering of the lasso tool. So most of the times in my tutorials, I always show you guys how you have to set up the lasso tool. So for example, if at all I get my lasso tool and maybe turn the feathering to around, let me turn it to around 10 pixels, and alias is selected, and this is going to be giving you a fine selection, I should say, but that selection is going to really be harsh and rough. So if at all I come and I try to select right here on the skin area and I try to be perfect when it comes to the eyebrow area, like this, and now you can see like the selection is really fine and well defined, but these edges are going to be sharp when you're trying to apply the Gaussian blur process on this area. So for example, if at all I come to the filter and I come to blur and I come to Gaussian blur and I try to move this up to that point when I'm getting the best out of my skin texture, so I'm just going to go with around 26 and I hit OK and I turn this off. You can see, let me try to zoom in for you guys. Do you see like, do you notice that this black line right here on top of the eyebrow? I hope you guys can see that. So it means that the feathering wasn't smooth enough for this effect to really be applied, and it doesn't blend in well with the skin. So it means that it is really a sharp kind of feathering and it is really rough for your selection. That is why it is leaving this cut out right here. So if at all, for example, my feathering, if at all it was around 22 or 25, it means it's going to be a smooth kind of selection onto the skin area, and it is not going to be leaving any line or outline on my selection. So make sure that you take that into consideration. So I'm just going to come and I'm going to come back to my lasso tool and undo that. So the other thing is, the other mistake people do or use when they're doing frequency separation using the lasso tool method is when they come to the nose area. I don't know why people do this, but when it comes to the nose area, most people just come. I don't think they really be careful enough, but what they do, they just come to the nose area and just come and select it as a whole, just like that. Then they can simply come to filter blur and come the Gaussian blur and just apply it just like that. Yeah, you're going to be having a really nice and smooth kind of application of your frequency separation. But if at all I turn this on and off, you can see we have lost out on the original dimension, and the nose or the whole nose really looks flat, and it doesn't have any sense of appetite, or it doesn't have any kind of dimension to it. So when it comes to the nose area, I'm just going to undo that. I hope I've just undone everything. I'm just going to undo everything. So when it comes to the nose area and you're using the lasso tool method, always come and make, you can see the way I'm moving, and when you're making these shapes, make them the way you are gradually moving the mixer brush tool, how an area is shaped in that case. So if at all I come and I apply my Gaussian blur, you can see it has left out the beautiful shadow right here, and you can come and apply it towards this side just like that. And when you feel like you want to apply it on the nose area, on this highlight, just come and select that highlight alone and right click and come to Gaussian blur. But when you do this, it means that you have generalized the whole nose, and it is the very first mistake we had in this case. So always make sure that you come and hit Shift Ctrl F or Shift Command F, and you can reduce on the opacity of that effect on that highlight. And you can see if at all I deselect and I turn this on and off, we still have the original shape of the model's face. So I think that is all. Then this is for the retouching. So the other thing most people do after retouching and they have realized or they have noticed that they don't have enough details in their images, I'm just going to come back and undo. So if at all they do that and they have noticed that they don't have any information embedded in their images, they tend to come and sharpen their images. So let me show you guys what I'm trying to mean. I'm going to create a stamp visible layer for you guys by hitting Shift Alternate Command E on the keyboard to create that. So hit Control or Command J. I'm just assuming that all of you guys know how to sharpen images, and for those that don't know, don't mind about that. So I've just made copies just here, and I'm just going to come to Filter, then come to Other, and I'm going to use the high pass method. So most people, after they have noticed that they use the wrong frequency separation details or the wrong radius of the Gaussian blur, or maybe even set up their mixer brush tool wrong, they tend to come to the high pass and they select a high radius for the high pass. So most of them just come and maybe they could even come and apply a sharpening of around 5 pixels and just simply hit OK. And now they come to normal, and maybe they could come and select vivid light. So you can see that this from a distance really looks nice and sharp, but when I try to zoom in this image, you can see that it has created this kind of a black kind of detail to the image. You can see the image really looks awkward, and that sharpening is not really recommended at all because it has sharpened the overall image and it is really overdone. So you can see that blackness that has been introduced to the image. So always make sure that when you're sharpening, you use a very low radius, and I would recommend that you don't go below or above a radius of 1.5 or even 1 if at all you want nice results out of your sharpening. Then after you have done your sharpening, I feel like this is too much, so I'm just going to simply drop down the opacity up to around 11. So I think that is fine. But when you're sharpening, you notice that the image has been really over sharpened and everything in the image has been sharpened. Remember, the major emphasis for sharpening, maybe you only wanted to sharpen the eyes of the model. So in order to sharpen only particular parts of the images, simply hold down the alternate button on the keyboard and click on this layer mask icon, and you can see that it has hidden the sharpening effect from the image. So if at all you want to bring back or sharpen particular parts, just make sure the black mask is selected and get your brush tool. So opacity and flow at 100%, smoothing at 0. Make sure that white is on the foreground, just like this. And to toggle, you can just use X on the keyboard. Make sure that your brush is white and black is selected. So if at all you wanted to sharpen only, for example, the eyes of the model, you can simply come using a brush tool and just paint over the eyes of the model, just like that. So just come and paint over just the eyes. So if at all I'm to zoom in for you guys so that you can see a sharpening that has been applied to the eyes, you can see the before and after. Maybe if at all I put up my opacity so that you can see it quite well. You can see it is only the eyes that have been sharpened. So always make sure that you sharpen your images the right way in Photoshop. So the other thing most people do after, remember when you're using frequency separation, most of the times the images tend to come out looking flat. So I'd recommend that you guys should also apply the technique of global dodging and banding to bring back shape or dimension to the images. So in my videos or tutorials, I always show you guys the different techniques to do your dodging and banding in Photoshop in order to add shape or dimension to your images. And in order to do that, let me show you guys a quick method that you guys can use to add shape or dimension to your images. So the method I prefer to use is the curves adjustment layer option and using a brush tool. So you create a curves adjustment layer. Remember, dodging and banding is more of contouring or adding shape or dimension to the images. So simply make a midpoint. Remember, dodging is enhancing the highlight, so click in the middle and just brighten the image just like that, and close this. Make sure the white mask is selected and simply invert that. Remember, in Photoshop, white reveals and black hides, so hit Ctrl or Command I on the keyboard, and you're going to name that a dodge, and we're going to do the same for the burning. So come back to the curves and make a midpoint like this, and now darken, and make sure white is selected. Hit Ctrl or Command I to hide that, and you can name that burn just like that. If at all you want, you can put these two in a group by hitting Ctrl or Command G, and you can name your group D and B for dodging and burning. So you're just going to open that, and you're going first of all burn. So come back to the brushes and make sure that your brush is, we're going to be using an opacity of around, going to be using a low opacity of around 10 and a flow of 100. Make sure the brush is a soft round brush and white is on the foreground. Remember, in Photoshop, white reveals and black hides, so just want to reveal the darkening effect hidden behind the burn layer. So increase on the size by using the brackets on the keyboard, and you can simply come and start painting over the areas you feel like you should be adding a shadow to. So just do that, and you can even come to the cheek area and just emphasize this cheek or the nice cheekbones to this image just like that. So you can see the before and after for the dodging and burning. We have just added shape or dimension by simply painting over those areas to enhance or bring back the facial structures and even contour the image, and this is going to really transform your images. So always make sure after retouching you add shape or dimension to the images, so don't do that mistake again. So I'm just going to come and delete the dodging and burning. So the other thing that is mistake number 8 that most people do, or people that use frequency separation do, is eye and teeth whitening. Yeah, I'm going to repeat this. Eye and teeth whitening is always done by most people that use frequency separation. So let me show you guys. If at all I create a layer by hitting Ctrl or Command J, and I'm going to be using the method I prefer to use, that is by using the camera raw filter adjustment brush tool to whiten the eyes and teeth. So come to the camera raw filter, and I'm just going to simply let it load, and now zoom into the eyes. So the mistake I see most people do is, so this also is connected to the color grading process. You always have to make sure that your monitor is calibrated if at all you want to do or to know the colors right in your images. So I'm just going to come all the way up and get the adjustment brush tool. So since I already set up my adjustments for the eye and teeth whitening, I know most people, and I've seen it in most images, most people tend to move the temperature slider all the way. So for example, if at all the temperature slider is at around -45, and I just come and paint over the white area of the eye, it is going to be making this area really blue. Let me show you guys. Here you may not be able to see it quite well. So let me zoom out. You can see that this eye is turning out to look bluish in color. So most people even take it all the way at around, I think 70 will be a nice example. So you take it all the way, so you can see that the eyes is really blue. So always make sure that when you reach this very step, always leave it really subtle and it is not too much. And the other mistake people do when they are whitening the eyes, they tend to also whiten this part right here. So when you whiten it, it is really not going to be looking natural. Remember, most of us, or if not all of us, we always have this part or this corner of the eye that really has that kind of nice pinkish, brownish kind of look. So always make sure that you leave it really the way it is, and only whiten on what you feel should be white in the images. So the other mistake when it comes to the teeth whitening, most people are really impatient and they tend to just get the brush and just drag it just like this over the teeth. So remember, most of the times we may be desaturating or whitening the gums, or maybe some part of the lips. So always make sure that when you're doing the teeth whitening, you always come and whiten each individual tooth, and really be careful with this process, and don't generalize the whole setup of the teeth in a bid of just whitening. Just do that for each individual tooth at a time. So basically these are the most mistakes people do, and those are the 8 mistakes retouchers do when they are trying to retouch images using frequency separation. And that is all for today's tutorial. And if at all you have learned something new from this video, don't forget to like this video, don't forget to subscribe this channel. If at all you have been watching from this channel for the very first time, Ronnix from Ronnix Photography, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in yet more videos on this channel. Don't forget to subscribe, keep practicing, and keep creating.